Hi everybody, my name is Saria, and I wanted to briefly add some more thoughts about Act 1, Episode 14 from the YouTube web series Diminish, which means another discussion about topics which may be potentially heavy for you. So here's a fair warning on that before any of this begins, and also another fair warning: if you are seeing this video and you have watched Diminish and you are very confused as to why this person who sounds like Will is talking about Diminish and none of this makes sense to you, you could either back out now, or there is a video on this channel which is titled "Is Unfiction Fake?" blah blah blah. You could check that out. It's up to you. In any case, let's continue before I get too off track, which is very on brand for me. And again, I don't want to frame this from the standpoint of a creator explaining why they made what they made, because creators really should not have to do that as a rule, and I don't want to present that as a standard for others to be held by. These are just thoughts, and because Diminish Act 1 Episode 14 creates a sharp discussion and probably will persist in doing so, I want to offer just more perspective on a human level. There are just more things that I've been wanting to say that I didn't say, or maybe said improperly, in my last video on this channel talking about Diminish Act 1 Episode 14. And when I feel like I presented things imprecisely, but especially inaccurately, and especially when such things end up out on the airwaves or out there in the world affecting people's thoughts, I don't like that. More on that later. The first thing I want to touch on is the fact that in the last video on this channel talking about Act 1 Episode 14, I often brought up the discussion point of creators doing things just for shock value, which I just want to point out is probably a misguided concept which creates sort of a bad faith perspective on why people make art. I feel like that would be a bigger discussion for another time, but I just wanted to bring up that I think the fact that I made that one of my main discussion points in my last video was not the right call, and I should not have suggested that that's some sort of criteria that creators like to employ in their art. Second, I wanted to address another common and valid viewpoint in response to Diminish Act 1 Episode 14, which is that regardless of any of the feelings going into it, the way that the episode was presented and executed just wasn't tactful, period. And that's fair. You can think that. I have nothing else to say about it. And now, the main thing that I wanted to bring up regarding this episode is something that I've been tossing around more and more in the year plus since me recording that last video talking about the subject. I've been uncomfortable that entire time about how I've never once mentioned one of the most important elements of why I felt as despondent as I did. And I want to say this up front, like in line with like how I don't want to make it seem like I'm trying to like explain myself or like validate what I did in my art. And I'm not talking about this to appease anyone, because the type of person who guffaws when they assume that Act 1 Episode 14 was directly commenting on one world event, that person was usually never going to be approaching any of this in good faith anyway. I know that. This is all because I've been wanting to say it, so there. For better or for worse. Sorry, I didn't mean to get so tough on you there. The thing is, I really don't think January 6th had to be what it was for Act 1 Episode 14 to be the exact episode it was. The most pervasive reason I was upset isn't something that can really be described verbally, which is probably why it's taken me so long to attempt it, but I'll try. It was because the entire time I watched the events of that day unfold, and so many other things before and since, I was more than ever starkly, crushingly aware of the fact that turmoil is written into human code. People will fundamentally disagree and fight tooth and nail on pure conviction and the desperation to maintain conviction, and that drives world-reaching, life-altering human events, and that is not changing. And I spent my entire life not only believing that I was somehow isolated and protected from any uncomfortable things out there in the world, but that true justice was this all-powerful force that if you believed in it hard enough and championed it the right way, it could make any wrong right, and that everybody would accept the same justice, you know? This is not how the world works. In the digital age especially, disagreement is the definition of our reality. me being in a tailspin as what seemed like was my entire existence has lost all sense and meaning is part of Diminish's fuel. And the reactions which caused me to make Act 1, Episode 14 were not a direct commentary on the exact badness of a specific event or something. It's January 6th just happened to happen in the middle of when I was making Diminish, and that day reinforced my disappointments that I was already struggling with, like the loss of my previously all-encompassing, soul-binding belief that everyone can be pleased, everyone can come together, that the greater good is something that can ultimately be universally understood. And it doesn't take much for the open wounds from that being gouged out of me to be poked at. I'm not totally square on this yet, but I'm pretty sure that dealing with reality, disproving what used to be my core self, is the core behind why Diminish exists, because I've been spending some years coping with losing that seeming entirety of who I am. It's a subject that I'm sheepish to talk about, because I have lost people, but the overtones of loss and Diminish aren't coming from my grief over losing someone else. It's the grief of losing myself, which feels very selfish. But like I've said breathlessly, I wasn't expecting anyone, let alone tens of thousands of people, to find Diminish and connect with it on such powerful stakes as losing their loved ones. So, be what it may, the significance and whatever it is of January 6th specifically, I just wanted to get that off my chest because it's been churning around in there for a long time, and I just wanted to provide that perspective. And I think that's enough about that for now. And again, I know I really never even needed to talk about that episode in the first place more than a year ago, let alone reopen it now, but I've been feeling like it and finally had the gumption, and I don't seem to have the executive function these days to do much of anything, so I wanted to seize the chance. But real quick, the video mentions another topic, which is related to the most recent video that I posted on this channel, which is my 6-minute and 14-second speedrun of River City Ransom for the NES, which, now that I think about it, is a pretty amusing frickin' left turn for the tone of this video to make, huh? But in its own way, it is somehow relevant to the, I guess, the general theme of personal heavy topics, because the most recent video on my channel, that speedrunning video, explored speedrunning and its place in being a very acute and agitating role in my overall low mental health. And also in the theme of this video and how I want to sort of clarify whenever I feel like I've been imprecise or inaccurate, and, you know, that's affected the way people have thought about things relating to me or relating to things in general. I wanted to revisit something that I was talking about in that last video, where I sort of presented the issue on a main pretense of speedrunning having become an addiction for me. I mentioned that several times and was pretty resolute in the fact that I was addicted to speedrunning, I was an addict, and I'm sure that there is a lot of truth to that. I'm not saying that that's incorrect at all. It's just in the days since I posted that video, I have been becoming more aware of the realization that I had only just sort of begun thinking about it in that light. I had only just begun considering that this was an addiction, and I just immediately latched onto it, and then suddenly I just immediately committed to, you know, making that the basis of an entire discussion with which I presented a concept to the world. And that is a tendency that I have always had, where the moment that I sort of think something that clicks something in my brain, I'm like, this is the truth now, this is reality, this is everything, and now my entire worldview revolves around it. And I at least feel it prudent to bring that to light and suggest that presenting speedrunning as being an addiction for me may not be the most precise way to view the subject. Because as I realized, like, even later that day, and especially in the days after, framing the issue as I am addicted to speedrunning is maybe not as accurate as something that I have known for years, which is I have a very addictive personality and I have very addictive tendencies, and those show very often whenever I'm engaging in activities and engaging with many things in general. And speedrunning just happens to be an activity which, as a rule, involves attempt after attempt after attempt after attempt after attempt after attempt for hours a day, for days in a week, so that you can keep your skills sharp, so that you can, you know, keep yourself mentally fresh on everything. And that really confused sort of the wires in my brain as to like how to frame the issue, because while I have been obsessing over speedrunning to the point where it has been ruling a lot of my thoughts in my waking and sleeping hours, and I don't feel like that is healthy, I think the more truthful way for me to present the issue, and also maybe the more helpful way for me to present the issue in the long run, and so that others can help me with it, is that I brought myself into the activity, and the activity happened to be one which highlights a lot of those things because of how its nature juxtaposes with my nature. It all led to me having a really nice conversation with a commenter on that video, because that person found it very fascinating that in the same video I presented speedrunning as being an addiction, and then also said, I feel like speedrunning will hold so many direct answers, not only so that I can enjoy speedrunning more, but also be able to glean answers about so many of my underlying issues so I can enjoy everything else in life more. That person thought it was very interesting that I would say that I was addicted to speedrunning like somebody is addicted to gambling, and then say, I bet the way to solve this is to do it more. So again, my addictive tendencies are really exacerbated by speedrunning, and that's why I've had to take it so seriously and will continue to. But I think that it's better for me to frame the issue in that way. Their addictive tendencies, it's maybe not a direct addiction. Although I also want to say that that doesn't mean that addiction to gaming is not a real thing and not an important thing, because even if that's not exactly what's happening here, that happens. Also, on the subject of me directly exploring speedrunning at some point to glean answers about myself and maybe improve my overall life and overall well-being, that's not something I ever plan on doing by myself, because that's what I've been trying to do for the last year and a half or so. Just like continuing attempts as normal, continuing sessions as normal, and just like, be better, be better. This could give you answers. I'd have a good session and be like, maybe things are solved now. I think I figured it out. And then, you know, I'd have the ups and downs, and then the downs would be like, I have failed. I thought I had this figured out. What is going on? I'm so worthless. This will never get better. Which is why I want to explore the concept of maybe getting answers directly from speedrunning with medical professionals from here on out. And my current therapist is very open to the idea, and we are currently beginning working with it, and we'll see what happens. I'm now doing some preliminary sessions where I'm telling all of my thoughts and feelings with every single moment that passes, and if she determines that it's something that we shouldn't continue with, or might not be the best course of action, or might not lead us anywhere in particular, then I will be responsive and I will do exactly what she says of me. And I admit that I was the one who brought the idea, because I am hopeful. I have a good feeling about it. It feels logical because of how it has brought all of this stuff to light, and I just really have a lot of belief in that leading somewhere. But I also am clearly a person who is compromised by, you know, the grief of having stepped away from something that I'm in love with, and the love itself. You know, love is complicated, and love hurts sometimes. But that was another thing that I wanted to clarify and present more properly, because that's been bothering me too for the last few days since I posted that last video. And if I somehow end up getting new personal bests as a result of this, I felt like it would be really awkward. It's definitely possible. I got this last personal best when I wasn't being aided by a medical professional and was just doing it because I was being a bad boy. So you never know. We'll just see where it goes. Like, it might immediately lead nowhere, and then I'll just be stepping away again, and then that'll be that. But at least I've clarified something that I said while I was in a low, and I was immediately clinging to an idea, and then just sort of going way too far with it, jumping to conclusions, and I've always had those tendencies. And I think as I've gone out into the world as Saria, I've not held back at all, for better or for worse, and that's landed me with a platform where it's sort of built on transparency, and so far I have a community which is incredibly accommodating to that. I feel like I have a chance to say things and then come back and say, yeah, about that thing I said, without even necessarily like even walking it back, or like ever being pressured into revisiting those things by public outcry or something. Like, I have the chance to just be as manically over thoughtful as I just am, and maybe that can help normalize the idea of like not not just being in a constant state of public imperfection, but working through mistakes publicly. Especially in a time where entire social campaigns everywhere, by everyone, are led against people based on alternative facts and whims, let alone in response to genuine errors. It's been really nice to just be able to be myself as I be human and be really imperfect, and especially neurodivergent, you know? That doesn't always lead to perfect actions. And I may not be able to have a platform like this forever, like if I ever make it big, and then I'm, you know, sort of in the middle of all of the most difficult parts of the digital age and, you know, everything all at once all of the time. But for now, I'm so grateful for this, and I'm grateful for all of you. Thank you so much for, again, just all of your support for everything. And I hope this video was something okay for you. It's been nice to talk like this. So there. I know I shouldn't, but I do apologize to all of you out there who, you know, Act 2 is something that really helps you, and you've had to have so many, like, sudden breaks and everything. That is partially by design, because, you know, Will is just as depressed and messed up as I am. But, you know, I was never intending for there to be this many breaks or for it to be taking this long, so I do apologize on those grounds, but Will and I are working through this together. And we're gonna be coming upon all of it as we need to. So thank you all for your patience. This has been an unbelievably patient community. Oh my god, this fandom has been surprising me just nonstop. God, I appreciate you all so much, and I wish all of you the very best that life has to offer. Have a beautiful one, everybody. Talk to you again. Dream on, friends. Peace.